is William Wordsworth? In a nutshell, he's an English poet who's famous for writing during the Romantic period of poetry, which, by the way, actually isn't romantic at all. It's about nature and spirituality. He had a wife, kids, and his sister actually lived with them. They resided in the Lake District, in England, by the way, not this particular lake that I'm filming right now. And that gave him plenty of time to enjoy nature and write about nature. They actually say that Wordsworth suffered from depression. So the poem, commonly called Daffodils, was written a few years after an actual walk that he took with his sister. They actually found a journal entry that his sister had made that detailed the date. April 15th, 1802. The wind was furious. The lake was rough. When we were in the woods beyond Galbarrow Park, we saw a few daffodils close to the waterside, and we fancied that the lake had floated the seeds ashore, and a little colony had sprung up. But as we went along, there were more and more, and at last, under the boughs of the trees, we saw that there was a long belt of them along the shore, about the breadth of the country turnpike road. I never saw daffodils so beautiful. They grew among the mossy stones, around and about them. Some rested their heads upon these stones, as on a pillow for weariness, and the rest tossed and reeled and danced, and seemed like they verily laughed at the wind that blew upon them over the lake. They looked so gay, ever glancing, ever changing. Later in that journal entry, she writes that it rained on them, and they had to go home, which is actually kind of funny because this poem sounds like nothing but sunshine. Wordsworth didn't write the poem until 1804, and it was published in 1807. I wandered, lonely as a cloud, that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. Beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of the bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be but gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what joy to me the show had brought. For oft, when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills, and dances with the daffodils. So, if you're wondering where we're at, we're overlooking Swatara Creek, and we're at Sweet Arrow Lake. Just taking a walk today and talking about I wandered lonely as a cloud. So while I'm here, taking in the scene, I'm going to give you a little summary of the poem. So the literal meaning of the poem. The speaker was literally walking around the hills and valleys aimlessly, probably feeling a little lonely. And as he passed by the lake, he noticed a lot of daffodils. Like oodles of daffodils. And it was clearly a windy day. And he stood and he watched the daffodils and the waves dancing. His loneliness was replaced with pure joy, watching this scene. However, he didn't fully appreciate what he saw until later. Whenever he's feeling kind of meh, the memory of this moment cheers him up. No lesson here because it's loud. There's a really pretty waterfall here I'm trying to look at through the bridge. Pretty awesome. on the other side, we have all right, let's talk about stanza number 1. A little bit of an analysis. I have a really pretty view up here, so I'm going to get to a good spot and take a look at the analysis. So stanza 1 of the poem. The speaker uses imagery that appeals to your 5 senses, mostly sight, touch, and hearing, to kind of paint a picture for you. And he's trying really hard to set the scene in this stanza so you can imagine in your mind what he actually stumbled upon that day. He uses a simile to compare his wandering to that of a cloud. So the word wandered is a great word choice because it's not simply walking, but it's more of an aimless roaming. And then suddenly, obviously, he sees a lot of daffodils. And he chooses some great words again. Word choice is key. So crowd indicates a lot. Like if you're in a crowd of people, right? It's a lot of people. Well, a crowd of daffodils means a lot of daffodils. The words host and golden really have an impact on our view of the daffodils. Host refers to a group of angels, and golden sounds way more majestic than they were yellow. Big difference. So this is where connotation is important. And if you need a reminder, connotation is the mood or feeling that you associate with a word. So while a crowd tells us there are many daffodils, the words host and golden kind of indicate that beauty and awe he feels at the sight of them, like they're amazing. Next, we know it was breezy or windy that day because the daffodils are fluttering and dancing. And then he hits us with some personification at the same time because he's comparing the movements of the daffodils to the people dancing. Word choice is, once again, key. Dancing is something people do when they're usually happy, and it's associated with movement and fun. Fluttering can mean a few things. It could take us back to that idea. Sorry. Could take us back to the idea of angels, this time bringing to mind their wings. So think of wings, like birds' wings flapping and fluttering. It contributes to that heavenly feeling. It's also a wonderful source of imagery to help us imagine the sound. Like if you really think about a windy spring day, I'm standing outside in one right now, and I'll find out when I get home how much wind my camera picked up. But you can hear the sounds of things flapping and fluttering. Like I can hear the few leaves flapping and fluttering. The papers in my hand are flapping and fluttering. This is a nice serene spot to talk about stanza 2. So in stanza 2, we're treated to a series of hyperboles. Hyperboles are used to exaggerate just to make a point. So he's exaggerating the number of daffodils, and he's still elevating them to that heavenly status. So when he says they stretch in a never-ending line, there's 10,000, they're as continuous as the stars. He's just really trying to drive home the point that there are a lot of daffodils. And when he compares them to like being continuous like the stars, he's again like relating them to a heavenly body. So the daffodils, clearly angels in the first stanza, now they're stars twinkling and shining and sparkling. So we're focused on sheer volume and beauty. And the last line of this stanza refers to them dancing again, happy, 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 but also refers to it as a sprightly dance. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but sprightly is the key word here. So sprightly is just a fancy way of saying happy, but it also brings to mind like playful little spirits. Like think of like wood fairies dancing around the forest. This would be a great time for one to pop out of the woods, right? So he's like comparing them to something magical, like little wood fairies dancing around. He thinks these daffodils are pretty much otherworldly and amazing. We're gonna walk a bit while we talk about stanza 3. We've got a little duck swimming in here. So in stanza 3, the speaker compares the sparkling dancing waves to the dancing daffodils. It's like some kind of dancing duel or some kind of dance-off, and the daffodils win. He wants us to just marvel at the pure beauty of the scene. The speaker is letting you know that like this scene is just bringing him so much happiness. I'm gonna come a little closer here so you guys can see this. He uses lofty word choices. So again, we're talking about word choice, and it's like glee, gay, and jocund. But then the last two lines are tinged with a little bit of regret. He repeats the word gazed, which tells us he's looking at it for a very long time. But he's telling us that he didn't really see them in the moment. He didn't appreciate them until later. All right, stanza 4. We've got some ducks here. And I apologize, somebody's car alarm just started going off in the background. So we've left the beauty of nature behind, and we're with our poet indoors now. And he talks about how he oft lies on the couch in a vacant or pensive mood. First of all, it's important to know that you cannot be both of those things. You're either vacant, which means you're kind of empty, or you're pensive, which means you're very deep in thought. Either way, he's not loving life in these moments, and he's feeling really good. So when he gets like this, moody, his memory, which is his inward eye, of the daffodils flashes in his mind. And that memory makes him happy. He loves his solitude and his time to think. And in this time, he reflects on that day and those daffodils. And the memory of that day and what he saw brings him happiness in his darker moments.